Hello everybody, this is Courtney with Fiber Fox Studios, and today I'm going to be showing you this pattern right here for our Mosaic Crochet Along. If you were following along exactly with me, we worked on this particular pattern the last time, and as you can see, we're going to transition up very nicely into our next pattern, and then from here I'm going to be showing you guys how to do this pattern in a separate video. So I want to get off started by saying that we are going to be working, in my case, with just 2 colors of yarn. You can work with as many as you want, but I'm going to be using my color A is the white for me all throughout my project. So that is the color A. And we're going to be starting a new swatch, which I'll be starting in my color B. So that's the blue right here. And each row, you're going to be alternating between your 2 colors. If you're just doing 2, if you're doing more, you're just going to continue to alternate. So you can get really creative with your colors and everything in this project. But it's just a standard size 4 medium weight yarn that I've been using. I've been using a 5mm or 5.5mm crochet hook. And you can, of course, use size 3 or size 4 yarn. And you can even do a mix of the 2. You want to drop your hook size if you are mixing yarns and use more of like a 4.5mm to no more than a 5mm if you're going to be mixing your sizes of yarns, like between 3 and 4. So we're going to be getting off started with doing a new swatch. That way, if you are starting with this pattern as your first one, you will be able to just follow this video right here from the start forward. If you are transitioning up from your last pattern, I'm going to mark on screen where you need to fast forward to so that you can just straight begin working from there and follow along with me. And we're going to go ahead and get started. We're going to be chaining in multiples of 10 plus 1. And I do want to show you guys real quick, if this particular pattern, if you really like it, in any of the patterns, you can always just continue up doing the same pattern for a longer series than what I'm showing. I've basically moved from one pattern to the next in each section of my project, but you can always continue working on up. So here's an example of what that looks like. This is where I started a new swatch. I worked the pattern that we're going to be working today, and then instead of transitioning to another pattern, I just continue to work in the same way. And at the end of this video, in the last 2 rows, I'll show you how you set up to either transition on back into this one or up to the next. It's the same transition from this right here into a completely different pattern, or transitioning from this right here into continuing to repeat it. And as you can see, I started to go up yet another row there. So this is a really versatile pattern. I think you guys are really liking these videos. If you do, please remember to give this video a thumbs up. You can leave any kind of comment down below. Always check my descriptions because I put a lot of extra information down in the description. And we're going to go ahead and get started now. I'm going to be using my color B. So I am using my blue in this case. And I'm going to go ahead and do a slip knot. So to do my slip knot, I like to wrap my yarn around my fingers like this. And then I move my tail right here in this case over in between my 2 fingers. Pinch with those 2 fingers and just pull back. And that forms my slip knot. So we're going to go ahead and chain multiples of 10 plus 6 at the end. So we're going to get started by doing our first chain. We've got our slip knot here on our hook. And we're going to grab our yarn and pull through the loop that's on our hook. And that forms our first chain. And we're going to keep repeating this in multiples of 10 plus 6 at the end until we've reached the desired size of your project. You can do a lot of different things with this. You can do tote bags, purses, blankets, pillow coverings, even table runners. I mean, the list goes on and on and on of all the projects you can do using Mosaic. So I'm going to go ahead and pause here. You continue to chain, and then you're going to meet back up with me when you're ready to begin your row 1. All right, so I am meeting back up with you. I've done a chain of 36 in my case. So it's 30 plus 6 at the end. And now if you take a look at your chain, the very first chain is right here underneath this loop. And we don't ever count this loop that's on our hook. So this right here is our very first chain, and here is our second. That's where we're going to be working into. And you want to go in there and get underneath that V and work a normal single crochet. So you grab your yarn, pull up a loop, grab and pull through 2. Now from here, we're going to be working in the back loop only all the way down to our very last stitch. In the very last stitch, we're going to be doing a traditional single crochet, and that way we end up with very straight and even sides. So from here, for this entire row, we're going to do back loop only single crochets. So we go into this back loop. So this time we're not under the V, and we're going to go ahead and grab our yarn and pull up a loop, grab our yarn and pull through 2. And we're just going to keep doing that all the way down. And then at the very last stitch, I'll meet back up with you. And I'm going to make sure you guys do that single crochet, because you're going to be beginning with a traditional single crochet going under both loops. So going under that V, always in the first and last stitch of every single row. And that is extremely important. So I'm going to go ahead and pause here. We'll meet back up at the end of the row. You're just going to continue working in the back loop only, just like I'm showing here. Back loop only, doing your single crochets all the way down using your same color bee. Alright, so you're meeting back up with me at the end of your row. You have worked one back loop only single crochet in each and every stitch all the way down your row. And you've got one stitch left to work into. So in this very last stitch, we're going to make sure that we go under that V. You want to be in there under the V each and every time at the end of your row, because you're going to do a traditional single crochet right here. So let me spread that out a little bit so you can see. So you've got those 2 loops there on your hook. So you're going to grab your yarn and perform a traditional single crochet in the very last stitch of this row, in each and every row. Now we're going to go ahead. For me, I like to chain up 2, and then I'm going to clip my yarn and bind off. And that's just my preferred method. You do not have to do that. You can bind off the end of your rows however you like, but if you're going to be making a bag or something that you're going to have a lot of, use of, you're definitely going to want to follow my instruction, chain up 2, and then I put my fingers right here and just pull my tail to cinch that down, and it places a little knot right there. So now we're going to go ahead, we're switching colors. We're going to be switching to, in my case, the white, which is color A for me. So I'm going to go ahead and get that ready. And what I like to do is just go ahead and do a little slip knot on there. I don't need a super long tail, but you do want to leave a long enough tail so that you can weave these ends in down here at this side. So we're moving back to the beginning of our work, and I'm going to get underneath the very first stitch in the row. I'm going to get underneath that single crochet, and that is where I'm going to work my first single crochet for this row. So I go ahead and slip my slip knot on my hook, and then I like to pull that loop on up. Oops, slip my yarn a little bit there. Let's do that again. Technical difficulties, I apologize. Go ahead and pull up that loop, and then I like to grab my tail and my working yarn and go ahead and do a chain. And then I like to go ahead and let my tail fall to the back. I'm going to go back down in that same exact stitch, and I'm going to grab my yarn and pull up a loop. Grab my yarn and pull through all those little loops on our hook, doing our first single crochet in this row. Now this row is also very, very easy. You can put your tail over right here and you can start working over it, or you can leave it to the back and we'll deal with that separately. But I'm going to go ahead and go into the back loop only, and I'm going to be doing the same thing that I did on our previous row. I'm going to do one back loop only single crochet in each and every stitch all the way down this row. So you're going to work one back loop only single crochet in each and every stitch, and then you're going to be doing your traditional single crochet at the very end of the row in the very last stitch. So I'm going to go ahead and pause here and work all the way down this row as well, and then we'll meet back up when we're ready to move on to our first mosaic row. Now we're here at the very end of this row, and I just wanted to show you I'm going to be going into this last stitch. I'm going to be working under that V, doing a traditional single crochet in the very last stitch, no matter what row I'm on. It's always how I'm going to do it. And then I'm going to chain up 2. I'm going to clip my yarn And then I'm going to go ahead and cinch that down, pulling that tail backwards, and there you go. So now we're going to go ahead and switch back to our color B, and I'm going to go ahead and get ready to do that by doing a slip knot again. I'm going to put that slip knot there on my hook. In just a moment, I've got to get into this stitch up here. So I'm back at the beginning of this row, and I'm going to go underneath the V to do a traditional single crochet, just like we have been each time. We're going to pull up that loop. I'm going to grab both my tail and working yarn and do a chain. Then I'm going to go back down into this loop, and I'm going to grab my working yarn and pull up a loop. Going to grab and pull through all those loops that I have there on my hook. So now we're going to get started with our first mosaic pattern. So we started here this row with the single crochet. Now we're going to do 2 back loop only single crochets. So there, right there in that very next stitch, back loop only single crochet. We're going to do another back loop only single crochet. And now in our very next stitch, we are going to be doing our first drop down double crochet. So to do a drop down double crochet, you're going to wrap your yarn around your hook, and you're going to look at your very next stitch right here. And grab this so you guys can see. And then you just want to slide your hook down. And when you slide down, there's a little ridge that we've left by doing the back loop only. And that's the loop you're going to be picking up. And then you just complete a normal double crochet. So you grab your yarn and pull up a loop. You do not want to pull up tight. You don't want to stretch that loop out. So you can always use your thumb to kind of hold it in place so you don't accidentally do that. And then you want to grab your yarn and pull through 2. Grab your yarn and pull through 2. And that is a drop down double crochet. And then we want to go on into the very next stitch, and we want to do 3 back loop only single crochets. But to make sure you're going into the very next stitch, you can always fold this double crochet back, and you will see, let me get that tail out of the way, that there's a stitch back there. And when we place our double crochet back into position, it covers that stitch. So then we know we're going into the very next stitch. So you can go ahead and do 3 back loop only single crochets. 2. These 3 back loop only single crochets are the beginning of our repeat for this row. It's a super easy row repeat. So we're going to be doing the 3 back loop only single crochets, and then we do one of our drop down double crochets. And the very next stitch is right here. I'm going to slide my hook down and find that little loop and grab it up. Now I'm going to grab my yarn and pull up a loop. Grab my yarn and pull through 2. Grab my yarn and pull through 2. So now we're just going to keep working in that same way all the way down the rest of our row. Back at the beginning of our repeat with 3 back loop only single crochets. There's 2 and 3. And then we do 1 drop down double crochet, and we just slide down and find that loop. And that's the end of our repeat. So you're going to keep working just like this all the way down the rest of your row, and we'll be meeting back up to move on to our very next row. 3 back loop only single crochets, 1 drop down double crochet in the very next stitch. That is your repeat. Super, super easy. You can always find that loop by just sliding your hook down. So you're going to go ahead and pause here and work down the rest of your row doing the same thing. And we'll meet back up and move on. So we're coming back, and this is what your work should be looking like now. And we're going to go ahead and get started. I've got the slip knot ready this time. We're going to go ahead and insert here in the very first stitch in the row. You can see that V right there. There's our V. We're going to go underneath that V, just like we've been doing. We're going to work underneath it, making sure we're completely under that V. And we're going to go ahead and add our slip knot on here in the back. And we're going to pull up that loop. Try not to split your yarn, because that is apparently what I'm doing here. Let's go back in. Having technical difficulties today, as you can see. So we're going to go in, pull up that loop, grab both our working yarn and our tail and chain 1, and then I'm going to go ahead and let my tail fall to the back, and I'm going to go back down here into that same exact stitch, going into that same stitch, grabbing a loop and pulling up. Now I'm going to grab my yarn and do a traditional single crochet, pulling through all those loops on my hook, and I'm going to tighten that down. Now I'm going to do a back loop only single crochet right here in the very next stitch. Go into that and do a back loop only. Now in the next stitch I'm going to be doing my first drop down. So to do that drop down, we're just going to be wrapping our yarn around our hook, and here's our very next stitch. So we're going to find that stitch and we're just going to slide down and find that loop down there. I'm sorry, my tail is probably getting in your way from seeing. We're going to find that loop and grab it up. And then we're going to grab our yarn and pull up a loop. Grab our yarn, pull through 2. Grab our yarn, pull through 2. So now we're about to begin our repeat for this row. We've got that drop down double crochet, and we're going to go ahead and be beginning our repeat for this row. So we're going to be doing, the repeat for this row is going to be 2 back loop single crochets, one in each of the next 2 stitches, sorry. So there's 1 back loop, here's 2 back loop, and then in the next stitch we're going to be doing a drop down double crochet. So here's our next stitch. We're just going to slide down and find that little loop. Go ahead and grab that loop up, and then we're going to hold it because we don't want to have tight tension. We're going to finish out our drop down double crochet, and then we're going to do 2 back loop only single crochets in the next 2 stitches, and then we're going to do a drop down double crochet here in the very next stitch. Go ahead and do our drop down. Then we're going to do a back loop single crochet in the very next stitch. And then we're going to end this repeat with a drop down double crochet in the very next stitch. So that's what your work is going to look like. So now we're going to begin that repeat again. We're going to do this again together. So we're going to do 2 back loop single crochets, 1 in each of the next 2 stitches. There's 1, here's 2. Then we do our drop down double crochet in the very next stitch. So here's the next stitch. I'm going to slide down and find that loop. Go ahead and grab up that loop and complete out a completely normal double crochet. Then we're going to do 2 back loop single crochets in the next 2 stitches. 1 drop down double crochet in the next stitch. Oops, split that. There we go. Then we're going to do 1 back loop only single crochet in the very next stitch. And then 1 back loop only drop down double crochet in the next stitch, and that's the end of the repeat. So you're going to continue to work in the same exact way on down the rest of your row. You're going to be doing your repeat again with 2 back loop single crochets in the next 2 stitches, 1 in each. 1 drop down double crochet in the very next stitch. 2 back loop only single crochets, 1 in each of the next 2 stitches. 1 drop down double crochet in the very next stitch. 1 back loop only single crochet in the very next stitch. And just remember, anytime you're unsure where your next stitch is, You can always fold that double crochet back, and you'll see that there's a stitch behind it. And when you put it in place, it's covering that stitch. So you can go ahead and move on and do your 1 back loop only single crochet and end your repeat out with 1 drop down double crochet in the very next stitch. So you can go ahead and pause here and keep working in that exact same manner, and we'll meet back up. Make sure that on your very last stitch in the row, you do a traditional single crochet working under the V under both of those loops. All right, so here is what your work is looking like after ending that row. We're going to go ahead and get started by joining on. Now for me, it's going to be color B, which is this blue color. We're going to be alternating colors all throughout so that you can see the designs popping out. So I'm going to go ahead and work a single crochet right here in this very first stitch. So I'm just going to go ahead and pull up that loop, grab and do 1 chain, and then I'm going to go back down into that same exact stitch, and I'm going to go ahead and finish out my traditional single crochet right here in this first stitch. Now, the next move we're going to make is going to be actually a drop down double crochet. So we're going to go ahead and find our very next stitch, and we're going to slide down and find that loop. I'm going to go ahead and grab up that loop. Now we're going to grab our yarn and pull up a loop, keeping it nice and loose so we don't yank our loop up. We don't want to draw it up. And then we're going to finish out pulling through 2, grabbing and pulling through 2. And now we're going to move on, and in the very next stitch, we're going to be doing a back loop single crochet. And we're going to do another back loop single crochet in the very next stitch. Now we're going to be doing a drop down double crochet here in this very next stitch. So we're going to find that next stitch, slide down and lift up that loop, grab our yarn and pull through, or pull up a loop I should say, and then grab and pull through 2, grab and pull through 2. Now we're going to go ahead and begin our repeat for this row. So our repeat is going to begin with 1 back loop single crochet in the very next stitch. And then we are going to do 1 drop down double crochet in the very next stitch. So we're right here. And we're going to go ahead and do our drop down double crochet. And then we're going to do a back loop only single crochet in the next 2 stitches. So we're going to go right here to our next stitch. And remember, you can always make sure you're hiding that other stitch with your double crochet so that you always can find your very next stitch. So we're going to do a back loop single crochet, and we're going to do another back loop single crochet in the very next stitch. Now we're going to do a drop down double crochet, and you can see we're here in between these 2 white posts basically. We're going to do our drop down double crochet. And now we're going to do 2 back loop only single crochets, 1 in each of the next 2 stitches. And then we are going to do our end of our repeat with a drop down double crochet in the very next stitch. Stop and take a look at your work. That's what it's looking like. So now we're going to begin that repeat again. And to begin our repeat, we're going to do 1 back loop only single crochet, followed by 1 drop down double crochet in the next stitch. Now we're going to do 2 back loop only single crochets, 1 in each of the next 2 stitches. So we're doing 1 in each. And then we are going to do a drop down double crochet in the very next stitch. And then we are going to do 2 back loop only single crochets, 1 in each of the next 2 stitches, 1 drop down double crochet, and that is the end of the repeat. So you're going to continue to work on down the exact same way and finish out your row. We're going to do 1 back loop only single crochet, 1 drop down double crochet, 2 back loop only single crochets, 1 in each of the next 2 stitches, 1 drop down double crochet in the very next stitch, we're going to go 2 back loop only single crochets, 1 in each of the next 2 stitches, 1 drop down double crochet in the very next stitch, and that ends your repeat. So your work is going to look like that. So go ahead and pause here and we'll meet back up in a moment to move on to the very next row. Remember, no matter what you're doing pattern-wise in the repeat, the last stitch is always going to be a traditional single crochet worked under both of those loops when you get to the very last stitch in the row. All right, so we're back, and I've already went ahead and joined on my yarn with my traditional single crochet in the very first stitch of the row. So we're going to go ahead and get started with this row. We're going to do 2 back loop only single crochets, 1 in each of the next 2 stitches. So there's 1, and here's the very next stitch. We're going to do 2. So 2 back loop only single crochets. And then the next move we're going to make is going to be a drop down double crochet in the very next stitch, which is right here for me. I'm going to slide down and grab up that loop. And I'm going to go ahead and complete out a drop down double crochet. Now I'm going to do 1 back loop only single crochet in the very next stitch. So now my repeat's going to begin here. We're going to go ahead and do a drop down double crochet in the very next stitch. So here's the next stitch. I'm going to drop down and grab up that loop. And I'm going to go ahead and finish it out doing my drop down double crochet, beginning of my repeat. Now I'm going to do 1 back loop single crochet in the very next stitch. Now I'm going to do 1 drop down double crochet in the very next stitch. Now I'm going to do 3 back loop only single crochets, 1 in each of the next 3 stitches. So I'm going to go into the very next stitch and do a back loop, single crochet, into the next stitch, do a back loop, single crochet, and into the next stitch, a back loop, single crochet. Now I'm going to be doing a drop down double crochet into the next stitch. And then I'm going to do 1 back loop, single crochet in the very next stitch. So that's what your work is looking like. So now we're going to go ahead and start that repeat again. We're going to do 1 drop down double crochet. We're going to do 1 back loop only single crochet. We're going to do 1 drop down double crochet in the next stitch. We're going to do 3 back loop only single crochets, 1 in each of the next 3 stitches. 2 and 3. Then we're going to do 1 drop down double crochet into the next stitch. And we're going to end our repeat with 1 back loop only single crochet in the next stitch. So you're going to go ahead and pause here and keep working the exact same manner all the way down your row. And if you're looking at your work, you can see exactly what you're doing here and the shape that it's creating. All right, so we're meeting back up and we're going to be moving on to our next row. I've already joined on my next color, my color B in this case, and done a single crochet to start out this row. So now in the very next stitch right here, I'm going to be doing a drop down double crochet. So we're going to go ahead and go into that very next stitch, drop down and do a drop down double crochet. Just like so. Now we're going to do 2 back loop single crochets, 1 in each of the next 2 stitches. So we're going to go right here into the very next stitch, and we're going to do a back loop only single crochet, and we're going to go into the very next stitch and do a back loop only single crochet. And now we're going to do 1 drop down double crochet right here in this very next stitch. So go down, drop, and find that loop, and then we're going to finish out that drop down double crochet, keeping nice loose tension. Now our repeat is going to begin. So we're going to do 1 back loop single crochet here in the very next stitch, and then we're going to do 1 drop down double crochet right here in the very next stitch. Now we're going to do 2 back loop single crochets, 1 in each of the next 2 stitches. There's 1, and here's 2. And now in the very next stitch, we're going to be doing our drop down double crochet. Just like so. Forming that little cross or plus sign, whichever way you want to look at it. And now we're going to go ahead and do 2 back loop single crochets, 1 in each of the next 2 stitches. 1 and 2. And then we're going to be ending out this repeat with 1 drop down double crochet in the very next stitch. And now our repeat begins again. We're going to be doing 1 back loop only single crochet, 1 drop down double crochet in the very next, 2 back loop only single crochets, 1 in each of the next 2 stitches, 1 drop down double crochet right here in this very next stitch, 2 back loop only single crochets, 1 in each of the next 2 stitches, and 1 drop down double crochet into the very next stitch. And that ends out your repeat. You're now going to go ahead and continue working in the same exact manner, doing 1 back loop single crochet, 1 drop down double crochet, 2 back loop single crochets, 1 drop down double crochet, 2 back loop single crochets, and 1 drop down double crochet. If you just follow along looking at your work, you'll be able to keep up with that really easily, and you're just going to continue to work the exact same way all the way down the rest of your row. We'll meet back up to move on to the next row. Alright, so we're meeting up and move on to our next row. I've already joined on my yarn with the traditional single crochet in the very first stitch. And now in this very next stitch, we're going to go ahead and do 1 back loop single crochet. And in the very next stitch, we're going to be doing 1 drop down double crochet. Just like that. And now we're going to be able to start our repeat. So our repeat for this row is going to be beginning with 2 back loop only single crochets, 1 in each of the next 2 stitches, 1 drop down double crochet in the very next stitch, 1 back loop only, single crochet in the very next stitch. Or I'm sorry, two of those. You're going to do 2 back loop only single crochets, 1 in each of the next 2 stitches. And then 1 drop down, double crochet in the very next stitch. 1 back loop only single crochet in the very next stitch. And then 1 drop down, double crochet in the very next stitch. That's what our work is going to look like. So we're going to go ahead and begin our repeat again. We're going to do 2 back loop only single crochets, 1 in each of the next 2 stitches. 1 and 2. Now we're going to do 1 drop down, double crochet. 2 back loop only single crochets, 1 and 2. 1 drop down, double crochet. 1 back loop single crochet. And then 1 drop down, double crochet in the very next stitch. And that ends your repeat. So if you take a look at your work, you can follow along just by looking at your work, because you're forming the center in between your work where you have your little pattern. So you're doing this, then this, and this, and this. So you're just kind of guiding your way through. You can go ahead and do it one more time with me. We're going to do 2 back loop only single crochets. That moves us right here to this, where we're going to do our drop down double crochet. Then we're going to do 2 back loop only single crochets, which brings us right here to this next stitch. We're going to do 1 drop down double crochet. Then 1 back loop only single crochet, and then 1 drop down double crochet. And that ends your repeat. So you can go ahead and finish up your row, and you'll meet back up with me, and we will move on to the very next row. So here's what your work is looking like, and we're going to be finishing out this pattern in this next row, and then I'm going to show you 2 additional rows to help you either set up into continuing on to create the same pattern for further repeats, or to move on to the next pattern that I'll be releasing, which is this one right here. So this next one ends out the pattern itself, and then we'll do our 2 setup rows together so that you can decide what you want to do, and you can move on from there. So we're going to go ahead and get started. I've already joined on my yarn with a single crochet in the very first stitch. And now we're going to be doing 2 back loop single crochets followed by 1 drop down double crochet. So into the very next stitch, I'm going to go ahead and do 1 back loop single crochet. In the next stitch, I'm doing another back loop single crochet. And now I'm going to do 1 drop down double crochet right here in this very next stitch. And that is what we're looking like. So now we're going to begin the repeat for this row. And this is a simple one. You're going to do 3 back loop single crochets in the next 3 stitches, and then 1 drop down double crochet in the 4th. So we're going to do 1 back loop single crochet, 2 back loop single crochets, and 3 back loop single crochets. Now we do our drop down double crochet. So there's our drop down double crochet, and that ends our repeat. So you're going to continue to work in the exact same manner all the way down the rest of your row, doing 3 back loop only single crochets, 1 in each of the next 3 stitches, and then 1 drop down double crochet in that 4th stitch. And then we'll meet back up when you finish out this row, and I'll show you how to go ahead and set up to move on to the next pattern, or to continue doing this same exact pattern. All right, so you're meeting back up with me, and this is what your work is looking like. You've completed this pattern now, but we're going to go ahead and set up to move on to another pattern, or if you are going to continue doing the same pattern a few more times or for an entire project, you'll be using these next 2 rows to set up to keep repeating this. And it'll be really simple. Once you see it, you'll understand how you're going to be moving forward with it. So we're going to go ahead and get started. I'm going to join on my color A, which for me is the white yarn, to the beginning of my project real quick. So we're going to go ahead and join on real quick. And just like we've been doing, we're going to be doing a single crochet here in the very beginning of that row. And then we're going to be immediately moving on from here. Our next step is going to be to do 2 back loop only single crochets. So we're going to do a back loop only in the next 2 stitches. So there's 1 and 2. I'm sorry, we need to do a third. 3. So we're doing 3 back loop only single crochets. I apologize. Now we're going to be doing our drop down double crochet in the very next stitch. And that begins our repeat. We're going to be doing our drop down double crochet and then 1 back loop single crochet. 1 drop down double crochet in the very next stitch. And then we're going to be doing 5 back loop only single crochets working all the way across here. We're going to be meeting up over here. We're going to do a drop down. So these next 5 stitches are going to be back loop only single crochet. So there's 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. And that ends the repeat. Now we're going to be beginning the repeat again by doing a drop down double crochet in the very next stitch. 1 back loop only single crochet in the very next stitch. And then 1 drop down double crochet in the very next stitch, and that ends our repeat. Or I'm sorry, then we continue on with our repeat with 5 back loop only single crochets. I'm sorry about that. So there's 3, 4, and 5 to end our repeat. So the repeat begins again. 1 drop down double crochet. 1 back loop single crochet. 1 drop down double crochet. And then 5 back loop only single crochets over the next 5 stitches. 2, 3, 4, and 5. And now you're going to begin your repeat again. You're going to do your drop down double crochet, 1 back loop only single crochet, 1 drop down only or drop down double crochet, and then 5 back loop single crochets. So you can go ahead and pause here and finish working out the rest of your row. All right, so this is going to be our final setup row for you to either continue on repeating this pattern or you will be able to move on to the next pattern that I will be releasing next week. So we're going to go ahead and get started. I've already joined my yarn on with the single crochet, just like we have been doing. And now I'm going to be doing 4 back loop only single crochets in the next 4 stitches. So there's my very next stitch. Here's number 2. Here's number 3. And here's number 4. And now we're going to do a drop down double crochet, and it's right here in between those two little posts we created. So we're going to do our drop down double crochet right there. Now our repeat's going to begin. We're going to do 7 back loop single crochets all the way across to this little section right here. If you take a look, here's 2. We're working all the way across this, and then we're going to do another drop down. So I've got to do 7 back loop only single crochets. Number 3, number 4, 5, 6, and 7. And then we do our drop down double crochet to end out that repeat. Now the repeat begins again with 7 back loop only single crochets. Nice and easy repeat. 7 back loop only single crochets and 1 drop down double crochet. So you're going to work just in the same manner all the way down the rest of your row. You're going to be doing your drop downs, little signal right there in between those. So it's the back loop only single crochets and then 1 drop down double crochet. So you're going to do those 7 back loop only single crochets, and then your 1 drop down double crochet. And then you will be able to move on from here, either on to the next pattern that you're joining up to, or you can continue to work this pattern down here in repeats so that you end up with something that looks like this. So I'm going to go ahead and pause here, and then I'll come back in just a moment to show you a couple more tricks. All right, so just real quick, I'm going to show you how you can go ahead. I'm going to talk about how you can go ahead and move on doing this same pattern. If you're not interested in doing that and you want to move on to the next pattern that's released, then you do not need to follow this, or listen to this. But if you are wanting to move on up doing this same pattern, what is happening here is now this part right here is now moved into position right here. So dead center in this section is where you're going to have these lines that are moving up. So it's just shifted everything over so that it's moving in a direction. Everything's not completely stacked on top of one another. So if you look at this swatch that I worked up here, you've got the original row that we did, and then we started doing a repeat of it. Right here is where we're at in this case. So we're on this row, and we just did a drop down in the white, a back loop single crochet in the white, drop down in the white, back loop single crochet, 3 of those across here. Then we did a drop down in the white. Then we did a back loop single crochet in the white. Then we did a drop down. And then we did a back loop single crochet in white. And then we did a drop down. Then we did 3. This is an exact repeat of the previous row where you did this down here. So you can just move on, and it's going to shift everything up. You've now got another section forming to move on here to the next repeat of it. So you can keep going in the same manner all the way up. And I am going to do a separate video and show you guys how you can do this, like by tutorial wise, I'm going to show you. But just to give you an idea, for those of you who can follow along with what you've already done, you're just now forming this little plus sign or cross right here in this area. So if you refer down to what you were doing here, you're going to be able to keep going. You're going to be here, dead center, right here is the dead center. Once you start adding in your drop downs, and as you can look here, your drop downs are just offset just a little bit. So it's just 1 stitch overs where you're dropping down. And then when you're coming back across, you know, on the next row, you're just sunk in 1. So it's forming these shapes. So I'll show you in a separate tutorial on that for those of you who do want to move up to the next and need a visual on it. So thank you guys so much for watching this. Hope it's been helpful. Hopefully you are enjoying doing this pattern. Please make sure you give this video a thumbs up. Please make sure you're subscribed to my channel, and please leave a comment down below.